Hello, and welcome to Great Sleep. Get ready to listen and relax. Tonight I'm going to tell you a bedtime story about solving the mystery of a magical frozen lake. The wind howled through the barren streets of Frostwood, carrying with it a biting cold that seemed to seep into the very bones of anyone unfortunate enough to find themselves in this desolate town. Emma Thompson was one such unfortunate soul. She had arrived in Frostwood seeking solace from her troubled past, hoping that the isolation and freezing temperatures would provide her with the solitude she so desperately craved. As Emma stepped off the bus, she was immediately struck by the eerie atmosphere that hung heavy in the air. The buildings, once vibrant and full of life, now stood as mere skeletons, their windows boarded up and their doors locked tight. The few people she saw scurrying about seemed to have a permanent look of weariness etched into their faces. Wrapping her coat tighter around herself, Emma made her way down the main street, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The cold seemed to seep through every layer of clothing she wore, causing her to shiver uncontrollably. She couldn't help but wonder how anyone could bear to live in such a place. The town's main street was lined with dilapidated buildings, their paint peeling and their windows covered in a thick layer of frost. Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as she walked past each one, as if the town itself was watching her every move. As she continued down the street, Emma noticed a small cafe on the corner. Its windows were frosted over, but a soft glow emanated from within. Seeking refuge from the biting cold, Emma hurried inside. The warmth of the cafe enveloped her as she stepped through the door. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the sound of soft chatter and clinking dishes. Emma found an empty booth near the window and settled in, grateful for the respite from the icy winds outside. As she waited for the server to take her order, Emma absent-mindedly picked up a local newspaper that was left behind by a previous customer. Flipping through its pages, her eyes were drawn to a headline that sent a shiver down her spine. Mysterious disappearance haunts Frostwood, the case of Jonathan Miller. Intrigued, Emma read on. The article detailed the baffling disappearance of Jonathan Miller, a young man who had vanished without a trace 5 years ago. The investigation had been fruitless, with no leads or clues to follow. The town of Frostwood had been left in a state of perpetual unease, haunted by the mystery that had never been solved. Emma couldn't help but feel a connection to Jonathan's story. She, too, was seeking solace in Frostwood, hoping to leave her troubled past behind. The mystery surrounding his disappearance intrigued her, and she felt compelled to uncover the truth. Determined to delve deeper into the mystery, Emma decided to visit the frozen lake that was mentioned in the article. It was said to be the central focus of the disappearance, a place where Jonathan Miller had last been seen. As she made her way towards the outskirts of town, the biting cold seemed to intensify, as if warning her of the secrets that lay ahead. Finally, Emma reached the frozen lake. It stretched out before her like a vast expanse of glass, its surface shimmering in the pale sunlight. The air was still, devoid of any sound except for the soft crunch of her boots on the snow-covered ground. Curiosity getting the better of her, Emma cautiously stepped onto the frozen lake. She couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding as she ventured further, as if the ice beneath her feet held secrets that were waiting to be uncovered. Emma's heart raced as she stepped onto the frozen lake, the ice creaking beneath her weight. The frozen surface seemed to stretch out endlessly before her, its pristine beauty masking a deep sense of unease. As she walked further onto the lake, Emma's eyes were drawn to a small wooden sign sticking out of the snow. Brushing away the frost, she read the faded words, "Beware the frozen lake." Intrigued and slightly unnerved, Emma continued her journey across the frozen expanse. The wind whispered through the air, carrying with it an eerie stillness that seemed to amplify the sound of her footsteps. As she walked, Emma's mind wandered back to the article she had read. The disappearance of Jonathan Miller had captivated her, and she couldn't help but wonder what secrets the frozen lake held. Lost in thought, Emma nearly stumbled upon something hidden beneath a layer of snow. Curiosity piqued, she knelt down and brushed away the frost, revealing an old photograph. It depicted a group of people standing on the frozen lake, their smiles frozen in time. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she recognized Jonathan Miller among them. The photograph seemed to be a snapshot of happier times, a moment captured before his mysterious disappearance. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma carefully pocketed the photograph and continued her journey across the frozen lake. She knew that she was getting closer to the answers she sought, but she also knew that danger lurked just beneath the surface. The frozen lake seemed to stretch out endlessly before Emma, its icy surface glistening in the pale sunlight. As she ventured further into its depths, the biting cold seemed to intensify, seeping into her bones and causing her to shiver uncontrollably. The air was still, devoid of any sound except for the soft crunch of her boots on the snow-covered ground. The silence was eerie, as if the frozen lake held its breath, waiting for something to happen. As Emma continued her journey across the frozen expanse, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The ice beneath her feet seemed to groan and shift, as if warning her to turn back. But she pressed on, her determination unwavering. The frozen lake was like a vast, desolate wasteland. The landscape was barren and lifeless, with no signs of vegetation or wildlife. It was as if time itself had frozen, trapping everything in a perpetual state of stillness. As Emma walked further into the frozen lake, she noticed a peculiar phenomenon. The ice seemed to glow faintly from within, casting an ethereal light on the surrounding landscape. It was a mesmerizing sight, both beautiful and haunting. Curiosity getting the better of her, Emma knelt down and touched the ice. It was cold to the touch, sending a shiver down her spine. But there was something else, something she couldn't quite put into words. It was as if the ice held a secret, a hidden power that pulsed just beneath its surface. Determined to unravel the events leading up to Jonathan Miller's disappearance, Emma began interviewing the townspeople of Frostwood. She quickly realized that Frostwood was a town filled with secrets and suspicion. Her first interview was with Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman who had lived in Frostwood her entire life. Wrinkles lined her face, evidence of a life filled with hardship and sorrow. When asked about Jonathan Miller, Mrs. Jenkins' eyes darted around nervously before she spoke. "I can't say much, dear," she whispered. "But I always thought there was something strange about that boy. He had a darkness in him, something that didn't belong in this town." Intrigued, Emma pressed for more information. She wanted to understand why the townspeople seemed to harbor a deep-rooted suspicion towards Jonathan Miller. Mrs. Jenkins hesitated for a moment before continuing. "There were rumors, you know. People said he had made a pact with the frozen lake, that he had unleashed something dark and powerful. But no one knew for sure." Emma's mind raced with possibilities. Could it be that the frozen lake held some sort of supernatural power? And if so, what did Jonathan Miller have to do with it? As Emma continued her interviews, she noticed a pattern emerging. Many of the townspeople seemed to harbor a deep-rooted suspicion towards Jonathan Miller, as if they believed he had brought something sinister upon Frostwood. Intrigued by the townspeople's beliefs, Emma sought out more information about the frozen lake and its mysterious powers. She discovered that the lake had long been the subject of eerie tales and superstitions. According to legend, the frozen lake was said to be a gateway to another world, a timeless dimension where time stood still. It was believed that those who ventured too close to its icy depths risked being pulled into its clutches, forever trapped in a frozen purgatory. Emma listened intently as the townspeople shared their own encounters with the lake's mysterious powers. They spoke of strange figures seen gliding across the ice at night, their ethereal forms illuminated by an otherworldly glow. Some claimed to have heard haunting whispers carried on the wind, beckoning them towards the frozen lake. As Emma delved deeper into the tales surrounding the frozen lake, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The stories seemed too fantastical to be true, but there was an underlying sense of truth in the words of the townspeople. She knew that if she wanted to uncover the truth about Jonathan Miller's disappearance, she would have to venture further into the frozen lake, into the very heart of its mysteries. As Emma delved deeper into the mystery, she stumbled upon a connection between Jonathan Miller's disappearance and a prominent figure in Frostwood. It seemed that this person had been involved in some way, although their motives remained unclear. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma confronted the individual, a man by the name of Richard Blackwood. He was a respected member of the community, known for his wealth and influence. As Emma pressed him for answers, she noticed a flicker of fear in his eyes. "I had nothing to do with Jonathan's disappearance," Richard protested. "But I know what happened to him. The frozen lake, it holds the answers you seek." Emma's curiosity piqued. She knew that Richard held valuable information, and she needed to convince him to share it with her. "Why are you so afraid?" Emma asked, her voice laced with determination. "What happened at the frozen lake?" Richard hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I made a terrible mistake," he admitted, his voice filled with remorse. "I thought I could harness the power of the frozen lake for my own gain. But it unleashed something dark and powerful, something that I can never undo." Emma's mind raced with possibilities. Could it be that Richard's actions had caused Jonathan Miller's disappearance? And if so, what was the true nature of the frozen lake's power? Emma's heart raced as she realized that the frozen lake was not just a frozen body of water, but a portal to another world. It held the key to unraveling the mystery of Jonathan Miller's disappearance. With newfound determination, she vowed to venture into the lake and find the truth. Seeking guidance, Emma turned to the townspeople who had shared their own encounters with the lake's powers. They warned her of the dangers that lay ahead, urging her to be cautious. But Emma was undeterred. She knew that she had to face her fears and uncover the truth that lay hidden within the frozen depths. As she prepared herself for the journey into the frozen lake, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. The townspeople had warned her of the dangers that awaited her, but she knew that she had to press on. Gathering her courage, Emma stood at the edge of the frozen lake, its icy surface stretching out before her like a vast abyss. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the ice, feeling its cold embrace seep through her boots. As she ventured further into the frozen lake, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, whispering secrets that she couldn't quite decipher. But she pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth that lay hidden within the icy depths. As Emma navigated through the treacherous landscape of the timeless dimension within the frozen lake, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. The world around her seemed to exist in a perpetual state of twilight, bathed in an ethereal glow that cast long shadows across the icy terrain. Every step she took seemed to echo through the silence, reverberating off the frozen walls that surrounded her. The air was heavy with an otherworldly stillness, broken only by the soft crunch of her boots on the icy ground. As she ventured further into the unknown, Emma's heart raced with anticipation. She knew that she was drawing closer to the truth, but she also knew that danger lurked around every corner. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, its form shrouded in darkness. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she realized who it was. "Jonathan," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. Jonathan Miller stood before her, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and longing. "Emma," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You shouldn't have come here. It's not safe." Emma's heart ached at the sight of him. She had come so far, faced so many dangers, all in the hopes of finding him. And now that he was here, she couldn't bear the thought of leaving him behind. "I won't leave without you," she declared, her voice filled with determination. "We'll find a way out of here together." As Emma and Jonathan ventured deeper into the timeless dimension within the frozen lake, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. The world around them seemed to exist in a perpetual state of twilight, bathed in an ethereal glow that cast long shadows across the icy terrain. Every step they took echoed through the silence, reverberating off the frozen walls that surrounded them. The air was heavy with an otherworldly stillness, broken only by the soft crunch of their boots on the icy ground. As they continued their journey, Emma and Jonathan couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows danced at the corners of their vision, whispering secrets that they couldn't quite decipher. But they pressed forward, their determination unwavering. The landscape around them seemed to shift and change, as if responding to their presence. The ice beneath their feet cracked and groaned, sending shivers down their spines. But they knew that they had to press on, for the truth awaited them just beyond the icy depths. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emma and Jonathan reached a clearing in the frozen landscape. Before them stood a towering ice sculpture, its intricate details shimmering in the ethereal light. As they approached the sculpture, Emma's breath caught in her throat. It was a frozen tableau, depicting a moment frozen in time. Jonathan stood at the center, surrounded by swirling ice and snow. His eyes were filled with sorrow, his face etched with pain. Emma reached out a trembling hand and touched the sculpture, feeling the coldness seep into her fingertips. She couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sadness as she stared at the frozen figure before her. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she came face to face with the prominent figure responsible for Jonathan Miller's disappearance. The person stood before her, their eyes filled with a mix of guilt and remorse. "I never meant for any of this to happen," the figure whispered, their voice filled with sorrow. "I was desperate, and I made a terrible mistake." As they revealed their motives, Emma's heart sank. It became clear that this person had played a significant role in the town's dark history, using the frozen lake as a means to fulfill their own desires. "Why?" Emma asked, her voice filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "Why did you do this?" The figure hung their head, unable to meet Emma's gaze. "I wanted power," they admitted, their voice barely above a whisper. "I thought that by harnessing the frozen lake's energy, I could change my life. But instead, I unleashed something dark and uncontrollable." Emma's heart ached for the figure before her. She could see the regret etched in their face, the weight of their actions heavy upon their shoulders. "What can we do now?" Emma asked, her voice filled with compassion. "How can we make things right?" The figure looked up at her, their eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. "We must find a way to reverse the damage," they said. "We must restore balance to the frozen lake and bring peace back to Frostwood." With quick thinking and determination, Emma and Jonathan managed to free themselves from the timeless dimension within the frozen lake. But as they made their way back towards the surface, they realized that they were running out of time. The frozen lake seemed to come alive, its icy tendrils reaching out towards them, threatening to pull them back into its clutches. Emma and Jonathan raced against the clock, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they fought against the freezing cold. Finally, with one last burst of strength, they emerged from the frozen lake, gasping for air as they collapsed onto the snow-covered ground. They had escaped the clutches of the lake, but they knew that their journey was far from over. As Emma and Jonathan caught their breath, they looked around and realized that the frozen lake was no longer frozen. The ice had begun to crack and melt, revealing a world that had been trapped beneath its icy grip. The townspeople of Frostwood emerged from their homes, their faces filled with a mix of awe and relief. They had witnessed the transformation of their town, from a desolate wasteland to a place filled with life and hope. Emma returned to Frostwood with Jonathan by her side, bringing closure to his loved ones who had long mourned his loss. The town learned the truth about the frozen lake and its dark history, a revelation that shook them to their core. But Emma's presence brought a sense of hope and reassurance to the community. She continued to solve other mysteries in Frostwood, shedding light on the town's hidden secrets and helping the townspeople heal from their troubled past. As the seasons changed and Frostwood began to thaw, the town slowly emerged from its icy grip. With Emma's guidance, they learned to embrace the light that had been absent for so long, finding solace in the warmth of each other's company. And as the years passed, the memory of the frozen lake and the mystery it held slowly faded into the annals of Frostwood's history. But the lessons learned and the bonds forged during that time would forever remain etched in the hearts of those who had witnessed its chilling arrival.